John Lennon names. His top 5 favorite bands. John Lennon, born October 9, 1940, in Liverpool, England, was a visionary musician, songwriter, and peace activist who reshaped the course of popular music. As a founding member of the Beatles, Lennon's sharp wit, raw honesty, and fearless creativity helped the band revolutionize rock and roll in the 1960s. His songwriting partnership with Paul McCartney remains one of the most celebrated in history, producing timeless hits like Imagine, Strawberry Fields Forever, and All You Need Is Love, Beyond Music. Lennon was an outspoken advocate for peace, using his fame to protest war and promote love. After the Beatles' breakup, he embarked on a successful solo career, leaving behind a legacy of artistry and activism. Tragically, Lennon's life was cut short on December 8, 1980, in New York City, but his voice continues to inspire generations around the globe. Lennon's praise for ELO's innovation, following the years of tension, competition, and eventual separation from the Beatles, John Lennon remained deeply connected to the evolution of modern rock. In the 1970s, amidst the rise of progressive rock and elaborate productions, Lennon found himself captivated by the Electric Light Orchestra, ELO. Led by Jeff Lynne, ELO's fusion of classical arrangements with rock and roll reminded Lennon of the creative experiments he and Paul McCartney had undertaken in the late Beatles era. Far from feeling threatened, Lennon embraced ELO as a band that carried forward the torch of innovation, blending strings, harmonies, and bold arrangements in ways that echoed Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band and Magical Mystery Tour. Lennon publicly praised ELO in interviews, noting that they were what the Beatles would have sounded like had they continued in that direction. For him, ELO wasn't copying the Beatles. They were expanding on a musical philosophy that valued both melody and experimentation. Lennon admired Lynne's ability to craft songs that were lush yet accessible, intellectual yet emotionally engaging. Tracks like Mr. Blue Sky and Telephone Line exemplified this balance, and Lennon saw in them a reflection of the optimism and wit that had once defined his own work. Another reason for Lennon's affection was ELO's authenticity in an era when many bands chased trends. While disco and glam rock dominated the charts, ELO invested in symphonic rock without compromising their identity. Lennon appreciated that level of artistic conviction, recognizing how rare it was in a music industry increasingly driven by commercial formulas. Privately, Lennon was also drawn to the camaraderie and chemistry within ELO. Having experienced both the creative highs and personal fractures of the Beatles, he admired the band's ability to function cohesively while still pushing creative limits. He even mused in conversations that collaborating with Jeff Lynne could have been a fascinating chapter in his post-Beatles career. By the late 70s, Lennon's admiration had turned into open endorsement, helping elevate ELO's credibility among critics who often dismissed them as too polished. For Lennon, ELO was proof that rock could evolve without losing its heart, and he valued them as both musical heirs and innovators in their own right. John Lennon inspired by Lobster. After years of semi-retirement from the music scene, John Lennon found himself quietly enjoying family life in the late 1970s. But a surprising spark came from an unlikely source: the quirky, new wave band, the B-52s. Lennon was instantly captivated by their 1979 hit Rock Lobster, a surreal and energetic track filled with eccentric vocals, jangly guitars, and playful chaos. While vacationing in Bermuda, Lennon heard the song at a local club, and something clicked. What struck Lennon most was how the unconventional vocal style of the B-52's singers, Cindy Wilson and Kate Pearson, reminded him of the avant-garde experiments of Yoko Ono. For years, Ono's vocal approach had been misunderstood or dismissed, But here was a band bringing similar ideas into the mainstream and succeeding. Lennon later admitted that in that moment, he thought, "This is it. This is the connection. If they can do it, we can do it." The encounter lit a creative fuse in Lennon's mind. He rushed back, picked up his guitar, and, as he famously recounted, woke Yoko up to tell her they needed to make music again. That spontaneous burst of inspiration led directly to the sessions for Double Fantasy, the 1980 album that would tragically become Lennon's final release during his lifetime. Lennon cherished Rock Lobster not just as a fun, danceable tune, but as proof that risk-taking and eccentricity still had a place in popular music. It reminded him of his own experimental roots with the Beatles and his solo career, reaffirming his belief in the power of originality over formula. In the B-52s, Lennon saw kindred spirits, fearless artists who embraced their quirks and carved their own path, much like he and Ono had always tried to do. Lennon and Led Zeppelin's respect, coming off the wave of inspiration he found in bold and innovative artists, John Lennon did not shy away from giving credit where it was due. In a 1971 interview, Lennon surprised many by praising Led Zeppelin, calling them the best band around at the time. This was no small compliment coming from a man who had shaped modern rock himself as part of the Beatles. Lennon's admiration was rooted in more than just commercial success. He recognized in Led Zeppelin the same fearless creativity and raw musical power that he valued above all else. Led Zeppelin's fusion of blues, hard rock, and mystical lyricism set them apart from the era's other acts. Lennon was particularly impressed by Jimmy Page's inventive guitar work and Robert Plant's commanding vocals. The band's ability to shift seamlessly between thunderous riffs and delicate acoustic passages mirrored, in Lennon's eyes, the kind of artistic range he believed was essential for lasting impact. They weren't just riding a trend. They were carving out their own musical language. For Lennon, who had grown weary of formulaic pop and overproduced acts, Led Zeppelin represented authenticity. Their unapologetic embrace of extended compositions, improvisation, and experimentation was a refreshing contrast to the safer, more predictable music industry standards. He saw in them a refusal to be boxed in, a commitment to artistic risk, values that Lennon himself had always championed. His endorsement of Led Zeppelin also reflected his recognition of rock's evolving landscape. By the early 1970s, the Beatles had disbanded, and a new generation of rock giants was rising. Lennon, far from being defensive about his own legacy, seemed genuinely excited to see the torch being carried forward by musicians with the same hunger and creative spark. This respect wasn't just professional. It was deeply personal. Lennon appreciated that Led Zeppelin's music had a visceral energy, something that could move audiences both physically and emotionally. In them, he saw proof that rock could continue to grow, challenge boundaries, and maintain its rebellious spirit even in an industry prone to taming its wild edges. John Lennon and the Byrds bond, after recognizing the brilliance of Led Zeppelin's raw power, John Lennon also held deep admiration for another band that carved its own distinct path in rock history, the Byrds. Far from viewing them as mere imitators of the Beatles, Lennon saw the Byrds as creative companions, artists who expanded the boundaries of rock with their signature folk rock style. In interviews, Lennon praised their shimmering harmonies, jangly 12-string guitar sound, and the way they blended traditional folk influences with the energy and rebellion of rock and roll. The Byrds' emergence in the mid-1960s came during a time when the Beatles were themselves pushing boundaries. While critics often compared the two bands, Lennon dismissed the idea of rivalry instead expressing respect for the Byrds' unique voice in the music world. He appreciated that they weren't simply copying the British invasion formula. They were innovating, merging Bob Dylan's poetic lyricism with electrified instrumentation, and in doing so, creating something entirely new. One of the things Lennon admired most was the Byrds' courage to maintain authenticity in an industry increasingly focused on mass appeal. Like the Beatles, they experimented with sound and song structure, but they did it in a way that retained a raw sincerity. Tracks like Mr. Tambourine Man and Turn, Turn, Turn didn't just resonate commercially, they carried a cultural weight, speaking to a generation in flux. Lennon recognized in the Byrds a parallel artistic journey, a refusal to be boxed in by labels or trends. Their influence also indirectly inspired Lennon to continue exploring musical diversity. The Byrds' incorporation of psychedelic elements and later ventures into country rock mirrored his own curiosity for genre blending. Lennon admired how they shifted styles without losing their identity, a balancing act that he knew from experience was not easy to achieve. Beyond their music, Lennon valued the sense of mutual respect between the bands. There was no bitterness, no undercurrent of competition, just two groups of musicians acknowledging each other's contributions to the evolution of rock. This camaraderie was rare in a business where egos often clashed, and it underscored Lennon's belief that art thrived when musicians supported rather than undermined one another. In the Byrds, John Lennon discovered a powerful affirmation that true innovation didn't have to come at the expense of authenticity. He saw in them a band that not only acknowledged and respected its musical influences, but also had the courage to break new ground and craft a sound that was entirely its own. For Lennon, the Byrds weren't just another group following in the footsteps of the Beatles or riding the wave of the British invasion. Instead, they were creative peers, artists engaged in the same mission of expanding the possibilities of rock music. Their fusion of folk roots, poetic lyricism, and jangly guitar tones felt fresh and visionary, signaling to Lennon that originality could emerge from a deep understanding of tradition. He didn't view them as imitators or competitors, but as fellow travelers on a shared artistic journey, each pushing boundaries in their own way, helping to reshape the cultural and musical landscape of the 1960s and beyond. Lennon and Beach Boys, mutual inspiration. After praising the Byrds for their authenticity and innovation, John Lennon often turned his attention to another American band that profoundly impressed him, the Beach Boys. While the Beatles and the Beach Boys were often portrayed as rivals in the media, Lennon recognized in them a shared pursuit of musical perfection and emotional depth. His admiration for the Beach Boys was rooted in their ability to craft lush harmonies, intricate arrangements, and songs that balance youthful energy with a sense of longing and vulnerability. Lennon's respect was particularly strong for Brian Wilson, the band's creative genius. In interviews, Lennon often acknowledged Wilson's brilliance as a composer and producer, appraising his courage to experiment with complex chord changes, innovative recording techniques, and unexpected song structures. For Lennon, Pet Sounds, the Beach Boys' 1966 masterpiece, was nothing short of revolutionary. While Paul McCartney has famously credited Pet Sounds as the inspiration for Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, Lennon himself admired the album's emotional sincerity and the way it elevated pop music into an art form. What drew Lennon to the Beach Boys was not just their technical skill, but their ability to convey deep emotions through seemingly simple songs. Tracks like God Only Knows and Don't Talk, Put Your Head on My Shoulder, resonated with Lennon's own belief that the heart of a song lies in its emotional truth. He admired how the Beach Boys could make music that was both commercially appealing and profoundly moving, a balance he knew was rare in the industry. Despite the press fueling a Beatles versus Beach Boys narrative, Lennon never saw it as a true competition. Instead, he considered them part of a creative dialogue, each pushing the other toward greater artistic heights. The Beach Boys' harmonic sophistication inspired the Beatles to refine their vocal arrangements, while Lennon's introspective lyricism encouraged bands like the Beach Boys to explore deeper themes. Lennon also appreciated the way the Beach Boys captured the spirit of a specific time and place, the sun-soaked optimism of 1960s California, while still making their music universally relatable. Even as their sound evolved into more complex and sometimes melancholic territory, Lennon respected their commitment to growth and their refusal to be trapped by their early surf rock image. One of Lennon's fondest acknowledgments came when he referred to Brian Wilson as one of the few people in the music industry he genuinely respected. To Lennon, Wilson's work was proof that pop music could be sophisticated without losing its soul. He admired Wilson's vulnerability in songwriting, his willingness to bear his emotions, and his dedication to chasing a sound that existed only in his imagination until he brought it to life in the studio. For Lennon, the Beach Boys were more than just a band with beautiful harmonies. They were fellow artists engaged in the same quest he had, to make music that could move people, challenge conventions, and stand the test of time. His admiration was not just for their records, but for their artistry, their risk-taking, and their ability to connect deeply with listeners across the world. John Lennon's legacy beyond music. After exploring John Lennon's admiration for the Beach Boys and his creative kinship with other artists, it becomes clear that his personal legacy reaches far beyond the records he made. Lennon's life, marked by artistic genius, outspoken activism, and personal vulnerability, has left an imprint on culture that continues to resonate decades after his passing. Musically, Lennon's contributions as a member of the Beatles and as a solo artist redefined what popular music could be. His songwriting, from the raw, introspective Help to the timeless plea for peace in Imagine, demonstrated that pop and rock could carry profound emotional and political weight. His willingness to write with unfiltered honesty inspired generations of musicians to embrace authenticity over image. Lennon's activism is an equally vital part of his legacy. Alongside Yoko Ono, he transformed his fame into a platform for social change, staging bed-ins for peace and using interviews to promote anti-war messages during the height of the Vietnam War. His fearless political stances, though controversial, underscored his belief that artists have a responsibility to speak truth to power. Equally important is Lennon's personal influence. His public openness about his flaws, from struggles with anger to efforts at self-improvement, humanized him in a way that made fans feel connected to him as a person, not just a celebrity. His journey from a rebellious young rocker to a more reflective family man in the late 1970s inspired many to believe in the possibility of change and redemption. Lennon's legacy also lives in the way his work continues to unite people. Imagine has become a universal anthem, sung at protests, memorials, and celebrations around the world. His music and ideals still find new relevance in each generation, proving that his messages of love, peace, and personal truth are timeless. Ultimately, John Lennon's personal legacy is one of courage. The courage to create without compromise, to challenge societal norms, and to live as openly and authentically as possible. In doing so, he not only shaped the history of modern music, but also set a standard for what it means to be an artist with a conscience. John Lennon's journey, life lessons. Following the exploration of John Lennon's enduring legacy, one cannot help but reflect on the profound life lessons embedded in his story. Lennon's journey, from a rebellious youth in Liverpool to a global icon of music and peace, offers timeless guidance on creativity, courage, and authenticity. One of the clearest lessons is the value of staying true to one's artistic vision. Lennon constantly pushed boundaries, refusing to conform to trends or expectations. Whether it was experimenting with new sounds or addressing controversial topics in his lyrics, he demonstrated that genuine artistry requires both risk and conviction. Another important takeaway is the courage to use one's voice for a greater cause. Lennon's activism for peace, especially during volatile political times, reminds us that fame and influence can be powerful tools for change, but only if wielded with integrity. Finally, Lennon's openness about his personal flaws teaches the importance of vulnerability. By sharing his struggles and growth, he connected with people on a deeply human level, proving that imperfection does not diminish greatness, it humanizes it. John Lennon's life is a reminder that to make a lasting impact, we must blend talent with honesty and ambition with compassion, living not just for ourselves, but for a better world. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below.